The meeting is being recorded. Okay.
1 second.
Who are seeking to serve in this office. And we are delighted that so far 4 of them are with us, and we are still expecting one more to join us. All 5 candidates accepted our invitation to participate in this forum, and we are grateful, gentlemen. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Believe me, it means a lot to our community that you are participating in this forum. As most of our listeners know, early voting in the state of West Virginia starts tomorrow, and our polls are open from 9 a.m. until 5 p.m. And Jefferson County citizens can vote at the Jefferson County Courthouse in Charlestown. Early voting, as I mentioned, starts tomorrow, and it will continue through Saturday, June 6th. And early voting will take place on Saturdays, but not on Sundays. Then our primary election is on Tuesday, June 9th. And our polls open at 6:30 a.m. And they close at 7:30 p.m. Mr. Steve Harris, a Republican, and Mr. Mike Chapman, a Democrat, and Mr. Tom Hanson, a Republican, will all appear on the June 9th primary ballot. Our 2 independent candidates, Mr. King and Mr. Cox, will not be on the primary ballot, but they will appear on the general election ballot in November. I'd like to thank these gentlemen for joining us tonight, and we are looking forward to an exciting night, hearing our candidates for Jefferson County Sheriff. Now, let me have a word of prayer, and then we will start our forum. Let us pray. Most gracious, kind, and loving God, we thank you tonight for this forum, for the candidates seeking the office of Jefferson County Sheriff in the great state of West Virginia. We thank you, Lord, for their commitment to serving our county and to keeping all of us safe. We ask your blessings on all of our candidates and their family and our citizens. Bless us tonight and keep us always in your loving and divine care. For this is our prayer, O God. Amen.
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 All right. We are going to open our forum with an opening statement from our candidates. And after the opening statement, I return the forum into the hands of my co-moderator, Ms. Antoinette Ringo. She is ready. She is fired up. So gentlemen, get ready. But we're going to first have our opening statement, which is 3 minutes. And our candidates are asked to give their name and respond to two questions. And if time allows, you can add something else to your opening statement. But we're asking you to share with our audience what makes you uniquely qualified for the office of Jefferson County Sheriff. And what is your vision for for the office of Jefferson County Sheriff. So in your opening statement, if you would respond to those questions, and if time permits, you may add other information. After your opening statements, we will enter a Q&A period led by Ms. Ringo, and each candidate is allowed up to 2 minutes to respond to each question. All right, everybody understand?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, gentlemen. Let me see, closest to me is Mr. Harris, no, I'm sorry, is Mr. John King. Would you start, please?
Thank you, sir. I would like to say thank you to the NAACP for inviting me to participate in this forum. I'm honored to be here, as the NAACP is an organization I support and belong to. My name is John King, and I'm running as an independent candidate for Sheriff of Jefferson County. I retired from the United States Capitol Police in 2018 after 32 years of distinguished service. During my career, I served as a patrol officer, canine handler, bomb technician, investigator, administrative officer, administrative sergeant, and special agent. Not only do I have an operational background, but I've developed guidelines, policies, procedures, special projects, research and development work, plans of action for protection missions in Washington, D.C. and throughout the United States, and coordination for continuation of government. In addition, I was tasked with managing millions of dollars, which included budgets, contracts, bids, payroll, procurement, leases, and asset management. When I retired in 2018, our K-9 section had a budget of over $13 million, which I managed and was responsible for. My education, experience, and leadership provided me the knowledge, skills, and abilities for being sheriff. My vision is really our vision, because unity builds bridges. Sheriff Doherty has done solid work with respect to professionalism, accountability, transparency, ethics, integrity, honesty, empathy, approachability, fairness, and consistency. These core values must be first and foremost in the Sheriff's Department, the tax office, the bailiffs, and animal control. The goal is to ensure all elements of the Sheriff's Office have the highest educated, trained, and equipped members within our means for the security, safety of the public, the courts, and the Treasury. There are 8 areas which we may wish to consider expanding or enhancing on for short-term and long-term goals. Number 1 is the establishment of crisis intervention training to include mental first aid or mental first aid health training. Number 2, expand community policing and outreach programs such as Worship Watch. Number 3, establish a web-based dialogue reporting system similar to SHIELD used by NYPD to report daily calls for service and additional information to the public to ensure transparency and accountability while building relationships. Number 4, conduct needs assessments for budget items and non-funded areas such as policy, work conditions, scheduling, and promotional process, and diversity. Number 5, conduct a manpower review to ensure resources are being deployed in the most efficient and effective manner possible. Number 6, establish a unified pay scale to ensure the Sheriff's Office has transparency and accountability and comparability. Number 7, provide advanced technology such as live scanning prisoners to rapidly identify them, and WatchGuard type vehicle and body cameras that run the entire shift, automatically download data, cannot be altered or deleted, and the data is acceptable for chain of custody for court purposes. Last item, number 8, modify and upgrade the substation up on the mountain, allow 2 deputies to reside there to build community relationships up on the mountain where that area's been neglected and needs more reach out. That's all I have for my opening statement, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. King. Now, Mr. King's volume kind of went down toward the end. Ms. Fleet, is that a technical issue on our side, or when he first started, his projection was much louder, but then as he went on, it seems like his voice went down. Is that on our part or?
No, I can't control the volume, so you just want to make sure you speak into the wherever the mic is on your computer, or if you have a headset like this, then your mic will be closest to your mouth and it'll come in a little bit more directly and clearly.
Okay, I've got that, gentleman.
Do you need me to repeat anything, sir?
No, I won't be able to do that. But
Okay.
Mr. Cox.
Wherever the mic is on your
Yes, sir. Thank you. Hello, I'd like to thank all of those involved for the invite and for everyone who will be watching and participating. My name is Steve Cox. I'm a lifelong, politically unaffiliated, registered voter, and I'm running for sheriff of Jefferson County. I'm uniquely qualified to be elected based on my lifelong service as a law enforcement professional and a current business owner. My professional start was in 1998 when I was sworn into as a Ranson police officer. Later working as a part-time law enforcement adjunct instructor, then leaving Ranson Police and accepting a full-time instructor position. Now, it didn't take long before I caught the attention of the federal government and was awarded a personal services contract with the United States Department of State and their Law Enforcement Bureau. I continued in that Law Enforcement Bureau and the Diplomatic Security Services till 2018, when I terminated my contract and started a fugitive recovery business, primarily serving the Eastern Panhandle of West Virginia. A year later, I was approved by the 23rd Circuit Court of West Virginia to start Cox bail bonding. My experience as a local officer and a local, state, federal, and worldwide law enforcement specialist instructor and a small business owner working in the judicial branch of government shows my superior experience and expertise over my competition. My vision for the Sheriff's Office is to change the outdated and long overdue business and law enforcement models currently used in favor of new successful practices that are known to work while being budget friendly, focusing on fair practices, victim advocacy, eviction services, and office transparency. Again, my name is Steve Cox, and I'm running for sheriff of Jefferson County with no political affiliation, just as I believe law enforcement shouldn't be politically driven. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. Mr. Harris?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Good evening.
Thank you. I'd like to, first of all, thank the members of the NAACP for this opportunity to address their organization. My name is Steve Harris, and I am a candidate for Jefferson County Sheriff. I believe what makes me uniquely qualified to be the next sheriff of Jefferson County is my extensive experience and my compassion for community and to serve. I am the candidate with the most total years of experience, the most experience in a variety of law enforcement career fields like patrol, field training officer, detective, SWAT officer, DEA trained narcotics investigator, community policing, as well as an active shooter trained officer. I'm also the candidate that has the absolute most experience and diversity working in communities of various ethnic backgrounds. I started my career in Baltimore City and retired from Prince George's County, Maryland Police Department. My career allowed me to work in African American, Asian, and Hispanic communities, as well as train rookies in those communities. I've worked communities from the low income up to the wealthy ones. Many times, those low income areas were also areas where minorities also happen to live. Of the various cultural and language barriers also were a problem in some of these areas that we had to learn to work through. To be honest, I preferred to work the areas that were having the most problems as I could feel a greater sense of worth and accomplishment. I was successful working these areas and enjoyed seeing the difference that I was making in their lives. Everyone deserves to receive fair, quality law enforcement services and an officer that is caring and compassionate. My vision of the Sheriff's Office, with me as sheriff, is to have a department that is responsive to the community's needs. Under my leadership, all residents will be treated with respect and fairly. Upon my first day in office, I will seek to speak to every employee of the Sheriff's Department and give them my number one rule. That rule is to treat everyone the way that I would want to be treated myself, or them to be treated themselves, or to have their family be treated. I'm a compassionate, friendly, engaging person that enjoys interacting and talking with people. You will find me very approachable out in the public, and I am the same guy. I will be the same guy as sheriff that I am right now. As sheriff, I will come to you and meet with you and your leaders in your communities and have real talk about any problems, both past and present, and work with you to resolve those issues. One of my goals is to restore the trust between the community and law enforcement. We need to be partners in the fight against crime, violence, and drugs that is destroying our youth, and together we can do this. I have an entire agenda of items that I want to accomplish as sheriff, and you can find those at steveharrisforsheriff2020.com. I also have a Facebook page of Steve Harris for Jefferson County Sheriff. I thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Thank you so much. Mr. Chapman?
Hi, everyone.
Good evening, sir.
I want to thank all the listeners for tuning in today, and thank you, members of the NAACP, for hosting us. My name is Mike Chapman, and I am your Democratic candidate for sheriff. I'm a business owner, an IT professional, a former reserve deputy, all here in Jefferson County. I know this county and its people. I was born and raised on a working farm here in Ripon. My parents were both educators. My mother taught at Charlestown Junior High. My father was a guidance counselor at Jefferson. I'm a graduate of the county's public schools and also of Shepherd University. I've served this community in many capacities in civic organizations as well as county boards. I have a strong network.
Sorry.
I have a strong networks of relationship throughout the community with a reputation as a trustworthy and empathetic leader. And before I can say what makes me unique as a candidate, let me say what we candidates all have in common. Not one of us has been a sheriff. Not one of us. A sheriff is different than a deputy. It's different than a police chief. If you ask a current or former sheriff, they will tell you that the office looks much different from sitting in a chair than it does from the campaign trail or even from another position within law enforcement. That's in part due to the non-law enforcement duties of the sheriff, but more importantly, it's that the sheriff directly serves the people. So what sets me apart? I'm applying for the job of sheriff, not applying for the job of deputy. My vision for the office is this. Instead of running calls, I'll be managing the 75 paid persons and 25 volunteers. The goal is to make sure they are all trained, all equipped, and motivated to serve this community with a high level of integrity, efficiency, and customer service. I'll spend my time working on retention and recruitment, including reaching out to communities of color to actively recruit young men and women from our public schools, social organizations like churches and universities. They have great outreach programs to help us find educated personnel. But I want to offer them the opportunity to have a career here at home. We don't want all of our young people going down the road to work. I will explore alternate funding sources to continue to hire, train, and equip our deputies. I'll build community outreach programs designed to both align the sheriff's office with the needs of the people and to make us all safer together. Examples of that would be community-oriented policing and a program I call Coffee with a Cop, where I have open houses to meet civilians on a quarterly basis. I'll do more to secure our schools. I plan to be more involved in expanding treatment options for the opioid addiction. The weakening economy worries me because increased joblessness leads to increased hopelessness and thus increased potential drug use and abuse among our community. We can only make a difference in the epidemic if we work to reduce the demand as well as eliminate the supply. Finally, I plan to foster a closer relationship with other county agencies. I would love nothing more than to preside over a full budget where I can execute my original plans unrevised. However, the reality is, due to COVID-19, we'll be caught in a budget crunch. One of the questions is this: will the feds assist by offering more grant programs, or will the money dry up? We don't know. I've built in contingency plans for all of my goals. I have a best case, of a worst case and a most likely budget and operations scenario to make sure that the department continues to operate and move forward and serve this community to its current high standard.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman.
Yes.
That your time has ended.
Oh, okay. Sorry. My apologies.
That's okay.
Thank you, gentlemen, that we will now turn this segment of our forum over to Ms. Ringgold, and she will lead us in our question and answer period. Ms. Ringgold?
Yes, good evening, everyone.
Good
And to the
evening.
viewers at home listening, I would like to share, before getting into the questions, the elected office roles and responsibilities of the sheriff. Duties of the sheriff of Jefferson County are to serve as the chief law enforcement officer in the county, serve and execute all returns, notices, and processes issued by the courts, enforce court orders, provide court security officers at court proceedings and security in county courthouse, buildings and grounds, transport prisoners and accused facing extraditions, detain and when appropriate, transport those adjudicated under the mental hygiene laws, provide fiduciary services to individuals who are unable to do so for themselves, review applications and issue licenses for concealed carry permits, collect all state, county, municipal, and school taxes, disperse money to appropriate, maintain all tax records, enforce payment of delinquent taxes, collect hotel, motel taxes, and administer animal control office to enforce animal cruelty statutes and ordinances. And with that said, we will now proceed to our questions that have come in for the sheriff. Our first question tonight is, if elected sheriff, what will be your #1 priority, law enforcement or tax collection? And which do you have more experience with? We can start with Mr. King. Keep in mind that we want you to keep within 2 minutes of your answers. We have quite a few questions. We have some coming in from online as well. So starting with Mr. King, if you would start, please, we'd appreciate it.
Well, the first thing that's going to go on is you would look at law enforcement. The sheriff's office is primarily law enforcement. The sheriff's department's law enforcement, the bailiff's law enforcement, animal control is law enforcement. The taxes are pretty much set into law, and I don't think that's as big an issue as moving forward with having a time period, like I call it the honeymoon period, to sit in and see what's actually going on, and then looking into a needs assessment plan to determine what things need to move forward and what things are going well. Some things are backed by or cost effective, some are not cost effective. And I really think that we need to take that a good hard look before we start making any kind of dramatic changes in the system. It's just, you have to look at the groundwork and not come in and start running a bulldozer through the place. It's very, very important. And I think we won't have any problems doing it. But I think the law enforcement, the biggest problem I see is the illegal drugs. And we had that problem in Washington, D.C. when I worked on the task force. And there are things we can do, but we need to look at the drugs as an enforcement problem, a treatment problem, and an education problem. And none of it's solvable very quickly, but it can be done. And it's going to be a #1 priority for me, is to work on the opioid problem. Just reach back to the DEA and go back to Baltimore and New Jersey, and where some of these illegal drugs are coming from, and try and stop the sources, because the end users, unfortunately, are the victims in these situations. And we really need to push that in this county. I know the overdoses were up 27, they had 27 overdoses last month in the county, which is up about a third. I know the domestic violence is up with all the things going on with the coronavirus. But we're gonna work together. But I think really we need to focus on the law enforcement part first.
Thank you. Mr. Cox, if you will now answer that same question.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first part of the question is, which is more important, law enforcement or tax collection? You can't put an importance on either one of those two functions as far as which one is more valuable than the other. They both have their they both serve their purpose, and you have to go in and work both of those with equal importance. The second part of your question was directed at I believe it was where is my experience at in law enforcement or tax collection. I guess if you put the tax collection in a business mode, I am a small business owner. I started a company not long ago, Cox Bail Bonding. It was about a year ago, but prior to that, when I left the federal government, I started a fugitive recovery business. In 2019, my business was approved by the 23rd Circuit Court of West Virginia, as I said before, and I started in business there. I was the first of its kind to meet the guidelines that the current judge who approves these companies. I'm the only person to have been able to accomplish that so far. That is a new company. Existing companies have done that, but not any new companies. So I'm a business owner, but again, my background has been law enforcement for 20 plus years.
Thank you so much for your answer. We have to move along. All right, dropping down to Mr. Fire, Mrs. Hanson, that is.
He's not here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Stephen Fire Harris, beg my pardon.
It's all right.
I see Fire here and I'm getting confused because the name wasn't on my list either.
I have a Kindle Fire, that's why.
Okay. Harris. So the same question, if you regarding the
Yes, ma'am. Yes. Well, I think they both are very important. The tax portion certainly is important for us to collect the taxes so that the county can continue to fund the various organizations and continues to function. But my expertise comes in law enforcement. I think the biggest and best thing that I can do for Jefferson County as the next sheriff is to really come in and pay close attention and work very hard with the law enforcement aspect of it. We have an incredible tax department in Jefferson County, a tax department that has been together for a long time. It's led by a very understanding, knowledgeable chief tax deputy. And for the most part, currently, the sheriff himself is mostly a person who signs the paperwork. So my attention is going to be come in there as the sheriff, get out in the community. The problem we have right now is community does not feel associated to the police department in any way or to the sheriff's department in any way. They need to feel that they're part of the solution for the problems that we have out there. Certainly one of the problems that we have is our narcotics problem. It's killing our youth. We've got to attack that. I am the only DEA trained investigator that has worked drugs, and I have an idea of the different things that we can do, to programs that we can start up right away. We have two incredible investigators that work narcotics right now in the sheriff's department. The problem is they don't get to work it full time. They have to split their time between narcotics investigations and patrol. They will be full time under my administration. As far as experience, as far as tax collecting, I have run my own business. I ran a very successful private investigative security business here in West Virginia by the name of Executive Protective Service. I did all the paperwork for the Eastern Panhandle for the child support section. I work very closely with the Child Support Bureau. I work closely with Family Court. In fact, I was a bailiff for 3 years with Berkeley County Family Court. So, but back to the beginning of the question, I will say that my main attention is going to be toward the law enforcement aspect of the job.
Thank you. Mr. Chapman.
Hi. Basically, I'm going to echo some of the things the other gentleman said. A good leader, manager does not have to pick and choose favorites. They can manage both or all the sheriff's organizations effectively. And you do that by putting the right people in place. And we have the right people in place. I'm more of a business guy, but I do have 10 years experience as a reserve deputy. The sheriff's office is a lot like a business. The tax office is a sales department. They invoice people for public services. They collect the money, put it in the bank, and if something doesn't happen, it goes to collection. The office of the sheriff is a lot like logistics. The sheriff and his chief deputy and his lieutenants have to make sure that we send the right manpower with the right training and the right equipment to the right place at the right time. It's service to the community. I, as a sheriff, just need to make sure that all of the people that work for me are trained. And I have to pick a chief deputy that is going to be a good leader and can handle all the day-to-day law enforcement operations. And then I can work on the bigger things like the opioid crisis that we're having. It's horrible because not only do we have the problem with the drugs, but we have all the crimes around it. We have everything from property crimes to human trafficking as a result of opioids. And then there's something I like to call the generation multiplier. You know, you have a young mother today that has 4 children and she's got an addiction problem. She ends up in prison for property crimes or what have you. Now you've put 4 more children at risk. You know, a lot of times they fall into the same pattern of their parents, and we see more and more people fall into these traps. So my take on fixing the opioids is to try to and spend my time enhancing treatment options. You know, do we need a bigger day report center? Do we need more funding for the day report center? Do we need public-private partnerships with other treatment facilities to get these people treated and helped? And not just to cure the drug addiction, but the underlying mental health issues, get them back to work, get them back on their feet and make them productive citizens again.
Thank you. The next question we have is, would you make a commitment to give a strong effort in the hiring of African Americans and Hispanics as deputies in both the law enforcement and tax collection departments? Feel free to start, anyone, and then we'll just.
I'll be happy to start on that.
Okay.
I absolutely. To the best of my knowledge, I don't believe that we have any African American or Hispanic officers currently, deputies rather, on the sheriff's department. I absolutely would do my best to recruit African American, Hispanic, Asian, people from all walks of life into the sheriff's department. One of the problems that we face here in West Virginia that a lot of states do not face is that we have the civil service here. And in my opinion, the civil service does more to hurt that kind of ability to hire than anything else. If we were able to actually go out and recruit the people like they can in other states, as for instance, Maryland and Virginia, it would be a much better situation than it is here that we have in West Virginia right now. West Virginia is stuck. You take the people at the top of the list who do the best on the test. Well, to believe you me, I know that people who write the best tests don't necessarily make the best deputies or law enforcement officers. It's a lot more to it than that. It's what's inside of your heart. It's what's inside of you. It's what you're understanding what the community is all about. I've worked as a community policing officer, and I've worked in areas of all ethnic backgrounds. So I understand the importance of being able to have officers and deputies in those communities that our youth can identify with. So absolutely, I will give 100% to get on to the sheriff's department in this county as many people that are African American and Hispanic and Asian as possible.
Next.
I'll go. One of the things I've always struggled with throughout my career is finding talent. It's tough. So I've had to be creative about it. And this applies to the sheriff's office as well. I think historically what we do when we're about ready to hire a deputy is run an ad in the local paper, testing on such and such a date. Send your application here. That doesn't cut it. We have Shepherd College has a program called Handshake. I can join that program and seek out interns. I can recruit from the criminal justice department during December and May graduations. Blue Ridge Community College also has a criminal justice program. our preventive resource officers in the schools, they meet with kids all the time and help us recruit young people that might not be college bound, that might want a job here in Jefferson County. There's a million ways we can go out there and we can find people for these positions, minorities, including the community churches. Is that my time up?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
It's kind of difficult to manage this, online virtual, but thank you so much.
Sure.
Okay, either Mr. King or Mr. Cox, if you have anything to add.
I'll take a run at that question. Thanks. So if I could take you back to my opening statement when I talked about, fair practices. I cannot commit to hiring anybody as a deputy because the Civil Service Commission does virtually all of the hiring. They take a written test that has nothing to do with the chief administrator, the sheriff in this case. They do a physical agility, and both of those things are created by the law. The only thing the sheriff gets at the end of this process is 3 names per position. From there, I can choose from those 3 people. So if you have 100 people show up, I only get 3 people. All right, I don't see them until it gets to that stage. Going back to what I said, outdated practices within the law enforcement agency and the tax office. It pretty much seems to be the same old thing that I have seen since I can remember in my adult life. Ads in the newspaper, and now they're doing a social media post on their Facebook. That doesn't cut it. What I will promise is a change in recruitment tactics. We're going to go and seek good, qualified people, and I don't care what race they are. They want to work. If they want to be law enforcement, they want to go to the tax office. I don't care. As long as they're good people and they want to have a job and they can get through the testing requirements that the state applies to them, I don't have a problem hiring anybody. But we're going to change our recruitment so that we're not advertising in the newspaper where most people aren't looking for jobs anymore. If you've seen those ads, they've gone from 3 pages down to about a quarter page these days. We're going to start a recruitment online and posting things in social medias, not just on Facebook. And they're probably going to end up being paid advertisements, not
All right.
here and share there.
Thank you. I'll ask Mr. King if you will respond to this.
Yes, one of the things that has always become people's opinions, they really don't understand what diversity is. Diversity is 2 equal candidates, and you have 20 of whatever nationality is working in a position. There's no other cultural differences in people that are working for you. And that needs to change as a culture. My agency had 1,800 people. One of the resources we're not reaching out to enough here, in my opinion, in Jefferson County, is reach back to the people getting out of the military. Because people coming out of the military have discipline, they're hardworking, and we won't have trouble getting them to recruit. It's just a matter of going out and doing that encouragement recruitment through the military. The Pentagon has all kinds of programs that look for people all over the country who may want to live here. I think that's a very underlooked at resources. In our department, we hired a ton of veterans coming back, and it worked so well. And these guys who come back, who've served our country, really deserve some chances. Men and women, black, white, Hispanic, it doesn't matter. All these people need to be treated fairly and be given the opportunity for these jobs. I sincerely think that the differences make us a lot stronger. You know, when I had my K-9 unit, it was about half white, half black, we had Hispanics, we had gay people in there. It didn't make a difference. People are people, but those cultural differences were huge going out and doing absolutely phenomenal to get things done. And I get a whole new perspective from everybody that I encountered and worked with over the years. A diverse workforce is a great workforce.
Thank you.
By all means.
All right, moving on to our next question. The question is, many African Americans believe that Republicans consider the Black vote as irrelevant and Democrats take the Black vote for granted. What would you say to Jefferson County Black voters to convince them that their vote is important to you? So, Mr. Chapman, if you will start us off.
I had actually never heard that before. So everybody, we're all in this together. This is our community. It doesn't matter what race we are. Everybody's voice is important. Everybody's vote is important. And I value everyone. My outreach program is for all of the voters of this community, all of the citizens that live in Jefferson County. And I appreciate and humbly request that I receive votes from the Black community as well as the white and Hispanic communities. I don't know what else to say about that. Your vote is important.
Mr. Cox, your thoughts?
Yeah, sure. So this is going to go back to my lifelong politically unaffiliated member of the society. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I'll also comment the same as Mr. Chapman did. I've actually not heard that before. But I'm also not very surprised that some topic has come down to a political party. And I think it's just absolutely ridiculous. Just because of your heritage, the color of your skin, your religion, your language, doesn't make you a part of a party. So I'll echo again and tell you, I'm an unaffiliated member of our county. I vote for the proper person. I don't vote a party. And I believe that everybody's vote counts. And you can probably go out and find many people that I've talked to in the last 4 months that I've ushered to the courthouse and encouraged them to register to vote. And they were people, again, of all races, colors, language, religions. Everybody's vote counts, period. Thank you.
Mr. Fire, please.
Okay, I think that's me.
Yes.
That would
Okay.
I have to, I'm going by, because otherwise I'm causing a conflict there, so.
I've answered to a lot of things in my life, so it's okay. Yes, let me say this. Everybody's vote is important. It doesn't matter what color you are. Everybody should exercise that right that we have in this fantastic country that we live in. But as far as, that Republicans taking think that the people aren't going to get considered. I've never heard that. As far as Republicans would love to have more African Americans involved in the Republican Party. And I could say that honestly because I was a Democrat at one time. I grew up in a Democrat household. I'm a John Kennedy Democrat. The reason I left the Democrat Party was because I felt that it no longer offered anything for me and my values. I felt that my religious beliefs were being infringed upon. I felt that my belief in all people of all races and all humanity that mattered, I felt that was being infringed upon. So when I no longer felt comfortable with the Democrat Party, I left there and decided to try to become a Republican. Since I've joined the Republican Party, I will tell you that we have welcomed African Americans with open arms to the Republican side. I would ask you, as a Republican running for sheriff, please give me an opportunity to be your sheriff, and I will prove to you that a Republican can serve the African American community as good as any Democrat ever has or ever will. Thank you.
And last, Mr. King.
Yes, it's an unusual perception on the caller's question. I worked with politicians for 32 years. I have friends on both sides of the aisle, Republican and Democrat. I look at people as that's why I've always been an independent. I think for myself, I make decisions for myself, but when it comes to the right to vote, how many people, we just went through Memorial Day. Memorial Day is about people who gave their lives for this country. That right to vote is so critical. It's the one thing that you have to say, to voice your opinion and elect people to represent you and your beliefs and your values and what you consider important. In today's society, we've lost a lot of what I call the old school politicians who were all about what's in the greater good of this country. What I want to be is the guys in the greater good of Jefferson County. What's in the best interest for the people here? I want to be someone who's approachable to you. I want to open that door. I don't want to have to answer to a particular political party. I want to be responsible and respond to you. That's what it comes down to. I'm seeking this office to serve back to the community. I'm not even going to take a salary if I get elected. I want to serve the community. I really do.
Thank
That's all I'm
you.
gonna say, ma'am.
We have questions coming from online now, so I'm going to take a question from online. We have quite a few questions that we are receiving, so keeping, being mindful of our time, we're going to ask you to try your best to complete the question within 1 minute so that we can accommodate everyone's questions. So the next question that we have coming forward is, do you favor or oppose abolishment of asset forfeiture in West Virginia absent a criminal conviction? Do I need to read that again?
Yes, please.
So the question states, do you favor or oppose abolishment of asset forfeiture in West Virginia absent a criminal conviction?
Well, I'll take it. I'm in favor of asset forfeiture after a criminal conviction if it applies to a narcotics case. The reason being, those monies, if you get high enough up in the organizations, can truly hurt that organization and set them back. That's the reason that law was on the books to begin with, and that they initially started doing it. At the time that law first became into play, I was still an officer in Maryland and was working narcotics. So that gave us a lot of leverage as far as developing informants. It gave us a lot of leverage as to working our way up higher in the organization. And when you can really make a really good narcotics bust, you can really affect an organization big time by if you can. I mean, some of these cases that we were getting were in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. You're pulling weapons off the street. You're getting cars off the street. You're forfeiting homes that they paid drug money for. So I'm absolutely for forfeiture of assets in those particular type of cases. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Straight up above you, Mr. King.
Yes, I've done asset forfeitures for all kind of criminal work. And one thing it comes down to is that you're trying to prove that the assets were obtained through illegal funds, that they weren't purchased through legitimate jobs, legitimate sources. And when the asset comes up, if it's a small time drug dealer, that's always weighed out against what we're gonna actually return from the asset, because the asset's going right to the treasury once it's sold at auction. But not only does it discourage in some cases, but a lot of times people are actually giving the property back. So let's say a young man has a vehicle and it's his parents' car and he gets caught selling drugs in it, and the parents didn't know or the bank doesn't know. It goes back to them, and if it goes back out on the street again, then it's able to be seized. Or we can pay off the loan and just take the vehicle. Asset forfeiture is a very complicated game, and it's very tricky to do. And you have to look at the end what you're going to end up with, because you can end up with a whole lot of old junk cars you can't sell for anything. So there's kind of a way game of how you're going to take it and when you're going to take it. It's not a cut and dry situation at any point. And being someone who's done it, I can tell you, it's not an easy road.
Thank you. Mr. Chapman, please. Mr. Chapman, if you will respond.
I'm sorry, I couldn't get my unmute to to work.
Okay.
Yeah, now, I kind of feel like this question might stem from some things I read in the news, none of which were in West Virginia. It would seem as though some small departments across the country use asset forfeiture to sort of fund their treasury. And what they do is they basically profile a person, and if they happen to have, they'll find a reason to search the car. If they happen to find a large sum of cash, they'll just take it. Because why would someone have $30,000 in cash in their car if they're not doing something illegal is the logic. And in some cases, it's been like a restaurateur going to an auction in Chicago to pay cash for equipment. So there have been abuses of asset forfeiture. So my stance on it is I support asset forfeiture after a conviction only. Nothing before that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I like that one a lot. And let me state the question again. Am I for forfeitures without a criminal conviction? Absolutely not. I support forfeitures, but I do not support a forfeiture if you cannot prove somebody guilty of the crime. Okay? Now, you can hear from some of the other candidates, and they talk about you get a big forfeiture and you can get a good promotion, or you're left with a pile of junk cars that are no good, and so you're not going to get any money for it. This forfeiture, forfeiting these assets are not here as revenue builders for law enforcement. It's here as a punishment for those people who are indeed involved in criminal activities. So if you can't prove that crime has happened, then we shouldn't be taking your assets, period. But I do want to point out that several comments I've heard is, law enforcement's brains are in the wrong place when they say, well, if I get a really good forfeiture, it makes me look good and I can get a promotion or I can get a raise, or we're bringing in a bunch of money for our revenue driver for our department. That's not what it's there for. And
okay.
Never look at it like that. Period.
Thank you so much. Our next question we have coming from our viewing audience is, will the candidates make a commitment to have regular training about implicit bias and also respect the dignity of all persons? I've kind of heard you touch on some of this, but if you give you another minute to elaborate on this a little bit. We'll start at the bottom with Mr. Chapman, and we will go with Mr. Stephen Fire, and then we'll have Mr. Cox, and then Mr. King, in that order.
Absolutely. I think it's important. I guess the bias here is maybe doing racial profiling stuff for traffic stops and things like that. We need to make sure that we treat all of our citizens equally and with respect. It doesn't matter the color of their skin, their nationality, the sexual orientation. None of that matters. Everyone will be treated equally, respectfully, and lawfully. And if it requires additional training to do that, we will. And if anyone in this community has a problem with the deputy under my watch, I want to know about it, and proper action will be taken, and that deputy will be sent for training and disciplined if it's merited.
I guess I'm the next one up.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, the answer to that question is absolutely. Coming from the state of Maryland and with law enforcement, one of the things that we did was we had yearly training. Everybody went back for 1 to 2 weeks of in-service training every year. And part of that training had to do with sensitivity. It had to do with understanding specific communities and trying to promote the police department in a positive light to the community and have more community involvement in what we did as officers. One of the things that I spoke on earlier when we first did our opening speech was that my very first day in office is I'm going to go to everybody that works in the sheriff's department, and I'm going to say to them, my number one rule is that I want you to treat people the way that you would want to be treated or the way that you would want your family to be treated. That is the number one rule. You have to have respect for people, you have to have understanding, and you have to be compassionate. So the answer to that question is absolutely. You've got to have continued training, and it needs to be, if not yearly, bi-yearly, or twice a year even. It depends on what the situation that is unfolding within your community.
Thank you.
Yeah, you know, a commitment to training is great, and I would make that commitment. But I'm going to go a step further than that. It's not just in training; it's in how we treat each other. You know, in the law enforcement community, it's how we treat each other. We talk to each other. It's how we lead from above. It's how we serve. It's how we treat the community. If you take a look at my sign right here, you're going to see a word. Compassion. It's on my sign. It's compassion in law enforcement. I have seen great officers, passionate officers, end up, you know, with an attitude that they just don't care about anybody else. They don't like to come to work. They don't want to be at work. And it affects everybody. It affects the office, the other employees, it affects the community.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay.
I'm sorry, we have to keep it moving.
Go ahead.
Mr. King, please.
Yes, ma'am. This goes back to my opening statement where I talked about the crisis intervention teams, and I talked about mental health first aid so that we can understand the people that we're dealing with when they're in crisis. But that goes a step further into diversity training. You know, you need to do annual diversity training. You need some kind of training, like we used to have verbal judo, so you could talk to people, learn how to relate to them and understand and respect them. During my career, I handed out a business card to everybody that I had interaction with. Because down the road, I would say, look, even if you gave them a traffic citation, if you have empathy with the public and say, look, if you have a problem with this or you don't understand what the process is, please call me. I can't tell you how many people would call or they'd say, look, I've got a problem in my neighborhood. But that interaction they have in the first basis creates a whole rapport with people. But without constant training and follow-up and monitoring and proper supervision, that's the key. The supervisors have to be out there watching what the guys are doing and ladies. And that's not just for the sheriff's department, that covers the tax office, that goes right to animal control. I mean, talk about dealing with people's animals, that can be a touchy situation in its own. So this training goes throughout the entire sheriff's office, not just the department itself.
Okay, thank you very much. Our next question is, recently, 2 white men were arrested for the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, which has been in the news quite a bit, a 25-year-old African-American jogger in Georgia. As sheriff of Jefferson County, what would you do to protect our citizens from racist, homophobic, and xenophobic hate crimes? And also, what precautions would you implement within the sheriff's department toward our communities, ensuring the minorities of their safety and trust to not feeling intimidated upon encounters with law enforcement?
Well, that's a lot.
Well, it was just stating the concern of the incident in Georgia. So basically the question is, what precautions would you implement in the sheriff's department with the concern of the African American community today of feeling intimidated upon being accosted under law enforcement?
Well, to the best of my knowledge, and I've been following that case pretty closely, the 2 people that are accused, actually, there's 3 people that have been charged now. The person who was videoing the incident as well, that none of those three, to the best of my knowledge, were law enforcement. There was one person that had been law enforcement. They were people that accosted the jogger, that's because that was out jogging. The one person had been a deputy at one time, but to the best of my knowledge, they weren't on the police department at that time. Now, do I think their actions was unjust? Absolutely. I don't see how anybody in their right mind could begin to try to defend the actions that they took from what I saw on the video. But that goes back to another part. If that was law enforcement that was involved in that, that goes back to the training. That goes back to diversity training, to empathy. It goes back into something that was my number one thing in my on my website and my brochure, and that's the community relations. The sheriff needs to get out of his chair, get out of his office, and get out there in the community. The number one thing that I put out there, and I was the first one of all candidates to do it, was that you need to get out into the community. You need to talk to them. You let them know that they have an ear, that you are listening, and that they are part of the solution. And you've got to have real talk about real problems of the past and the present and the future, and work on it together and solve those problems. But the community's got to be involved in this, along with the sheriff of this county, if it were to guard against it here.
All right, thank you, sir. Moving along, Mr. Chapman, please, a response.
I haven't followed that case very closely, but it sounds horrible. It's impossible to protect everybody in the community at all times. It really is. We do our best. I pray to God nothing like that happens, and we don't have that type of a racial issue here. You would know better than me if that exists. All I can say is that it won't be tolerated. We'll do our best to stamp it out. And I'm hoping that we can bring some diversity to the sheriff's deputies, because I feel like that it'll help solidify the relationship between law enforcement and the African American community. It helps build trust. So there'll be people, if the African American community needs help, there'll be some of your own on our force, in case some members don't trust other people. So I'm going to do my best to diversify the deputies and to keep the community safe, and to keep an ear open for any of these kinds of problems, and always have an open door policy for people who are suffering from any type of discrimination or unlawful harassment, etc.
Thank you. Just to let you know, we have we're trying to control the timing so I don't have to interrupt. So when you hear the little ting, 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 that is our new indication that your time has expired. If you will please acknowledge that. Thank you. We will have Mr. Cox, and then Mr. King, if you will be the last to respond to that question. I'm sorry, your volume. Your volume.
Thank you very much. Thanks. So the question doesn't actually pertain directly towards that investigation that's ongoing, but it pertains to a situation that we have seen time and time and time again. Now, I am the only person currently attending this particular forum who has any law enforcement experience as a certified police officer in West Virginia. And I can tell you what I've seen in the past and what I see currently amongst law enforcement. And I don't necessarily care for a lot of the attitudes. So I'm going to take you back to what I said before, compassion. If we can't do our job compassionately, then you're not going to do your job for Jefferson County Sheriff's Office, period. All right? I'm not going to tolerate activities that may be racially motivated. It's just not going to happen. And I'm going to end it with that. Compassion in law enforcement, compassion in policing.
Perfect.
You ready for me, ma'am?
Yes, yes.
Well, that crime is really a heinous crime that happened. And one thing that when you're in a situation where it stems within your own agency, it's best to just roll that over to the Justice Department, let them come in and do what they have to do, and don't hinder their investigation. The second thing that they really should consider is that we used to have an Inspector General's office that handled internal stuff. And the reason they did that, we just have one, well, you only need one or two people here, is it creates a office outside of whether it's the sheriff or the tax officer, animal control. It creates an outside source to come in and look at things and take it head on right now. So there's no, buddy system, or you're not working with the people who are actually conducting the investigation. So it's separate and apart, and it makes it a lot more functional and clean, especially if you're dealing with civil rights violations. Those kind of things, you just need to get the people in here and take your people out of the mix, because no matter what you do, it's going to look like you covered it up.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Our next question is, how would you work to keep incarceration rates down?
I'll take that one.
Okay.
Well, one thing that's working here is the home monitoring systems that they're using, the ankle bracelets, you want to call them, for, nonviolent criminals. What it's doing is it's giving people a second chance in the county, and they're going to the data reporting station or office, and it's keeping families together. It's keeping them working. It's lowering the bill that we're paying to the regional jail. We need to look at programs. This is a great way to try and give people that second chance, especially when people are, are younger, and we can really, really help our community by reaching out and doing that. It's just a valuable resource. And I don't know why we don't do more of it than I'm sure when I've talked to Sheriff Doherty, they said the program is working great, and they have very few repeat offenders in the program because they know the ground rules right out front. It's a very valuable resource here in the county, and I hope that it keeps pushing forward. That's all I got to put in there.
Next, please. Feel free.
Yeah, sure. This is Steve Cox. I'll jump in there. So I am in complete support of any program that we can come up with that will help keep people out of jail. But we also have to consider that the last expansion of our jailing facility was over 20 years ago, and we have increased our population ×2. We cannot continue down this same road. We are overpopulated, and people commit crimes, and there is punishment for that crime. When you have repeat after repeat after repeat offenders going into programs that keep them out of jail, they learn the rules, they learn how to get through that system, that program, without virtually any punishment at all.
Time.
I love the programs, and I want to support them, but I cannot support just keeping people out of jail who commit crimes.
Time.
Time and time again, that is.
Time.
Mr. Chapman or
I'll go.
Stephen?
I'll go. Basically, I'm a big supporter of the home confinement system. It is working really well. I think there's about 100 people on it now, give or take. Another component of the program I'd like to add is when we arrest first-time offenders for having narcotics in their possession, that sometimes is an injustice because they're already suffering an addiction, and now they have a criminal record on top of it to contend with. I'd like to see a program where we can get people into treatment faster before they get an arrest on their record, and try to keep them clean, keep their record clean. And of course that reduces the cost of the jail and everything else as well. I don't know how we'd work out the logistics of that, but that's something I'm going to work on.
Okay.
I would, a combination of just about what everybody has said. For one, the home confinement program, I'm a big supporter of that. The treatment facilities definitely are something that we need to, I think, try to get people into much more than what is done today. The jails are so overcrowded, it's awful. But the other thing that I think we're not looking at here is, what about the work release program? But instead of them going to their jail cell at night, they actually go home. We've got enough stuff out here, junk along the side of the road, trash along the side of the road, and we put these people out here that get convicted of crimes on a work type release program where they can come out and work in the community, or get with one of these corporations that are building homes for the homeless. Put them to work in that capacity, doing something positive for the community, maybe even let them be able to learn a trade out of it. And I think that would serve a much better purpose for these crimes that are minor at all.
Thank you. And you kind of touched on my next question. The next question that I have is of the community service. So our county is inundated with litter along our roadways and highways. So the question is, what are your thoughts on utilizing the nonviolent incarcerated offenders, as you just were hitting on, to work outdoors along the roadside, picking up the massive amount of litter? So since you already elaborated on that, we will hear from Mr. Cox and Mr. Chapman.
Sure. I'll take that, Mr. Chapman, if you don't mind.
All right.
I'm totally for using non-violent offenders to help with that trash cleanup. And they also have to not be a flight risk at the same time. And I can tell you from my own experience, within 1 mile of where I live, I have 2 areas along the roadway that are basically side of the road trash dumps that I have gone out myself and cleaned up. Man, I am sick and tired of seeing it. I unfortunately do not get a response out of law enforcement when I call for them. But that doesn't mean that they're just not coming out. These guys are very busy, and trash isn't going to hurt anybody physically. So I get it, and I just go out and take care of it. But there are other things that we can also do, like putting cameras out, finding the people who are dumping and charging them with it. I'm sick of seeing it. I want it cleaned up. And if we can get inmates who want to voluntarily go out there and do this for us, then great. I will dedicate the manpower to do that. And heck, maybe that'll help take some time off their sentence too. I'm all for it. Let's get it done. Clean up the world.
I'm also for using inmates as labor. I'll take it further and crash. This one might require a vision or maybe even a trainer, but there's an opportunity to teach them a trade in this process as well. We have county buildings that need painting. Maybe drywall work patched. There are janitorial services. There are lots of other things that we could use inmates for community service, and also dovetail that into a training program for a skill or a trade or some real work experience. We just have to do it.
Mr. King, I think you didn't have the opportunity to address that.
I lost you on the question, ma'am. Can you repeat the question?
Okay, so the question was that—
I'm having some technical problems.
Okay, our community is inundated with litter along our roadways and highways. And what are your thoughts on utilizing the non-violent incarcerated offenders to work outdoors along the roadsides, picking up the massive amount of the litter, or to help to keep our community clean?
I think it's a great idea if they want to participate in it. Maybe get some time off their sentence. Maybe use some of the people that get the DWIs and do their weekend time. Come down there and help pick up some of the trash and organize it. I think it's a great plan. But even beyond that, if we can get some people, and look at some skill sets for some of these people. I think I was talking to a teacher in Martinsburg the other day. They don't even teach industrial arts in the schools anymore or anything. How do these people get job skills? We've got to find some way to facilitate so we don't get them back in the system. But as far as the trash, yeah, if they pick it up, great. I'd love to see it happen, but get them in and out of the prison and how we're going to get them. I mean, the regional jail and get them there. Yeah, that's a little bit tricky. You may be able to use some of the home monitoring people, say on a Saturday, to reduce some of their time. I don't know. We're going to have to work it out with the courts and figure it out. But there's definitely a way to make it. I agree.
Okay, we're coming down to getting close to the end of our forum this evening. The last question that I have is, what is your relationship, or do you have a positive relationship with the minority and lower income community here in Jefferson County?
I'll be glad to take that, start off with. I think that I have a good relationship with the minority community here in Jefferson County. I can honestly tell you that I have African-American folks, Asian-American folks, and Hispanic folks all working within my campaign. Some of the folks that I have worked with over the years have come from all walks of life. We didn't see a color of our skin on the department where I worked. We saw the color of our uniform. We were all brothers and sisters. I've lived in, as a police officer, raising a family, I lived in a low-income, predominantly African-American community for a while. So I understand the needs of that community. And as far as I know, I'm the only officer that has much diversity, experience in diversity, as that it's going to be running for Jefferson County Sheriff. I have relatives that are African American.
Thank you. Mr. Cox, you want to go next? So, because we're going to have to speed things up a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll try to keep it short too. I think that if you in the urban areas, you will probably, if you take a walk down the street, you will talk to people in those urban areas, and they will say, "Have you met any of the candidates for sheriff?" And they're going to say, "Yeah, we met Cox," because he walks down the street, says hi, and shakes everybody's hands and introduces himself. I've seen his truck driving through through town with his sign. I see him all the time. I'm out there. I don't discriminate. I've never been thought of as a person of discrimination. I had thought about. I was going back through history real quick, and I grew up and I was in PG County Public Schools. I left there and started Winchester Public Schools in the 6th grade. And I did not know what racism was until I got to Winchester Public Schools.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. Mr. King?
Well, I worked in DC for many, many years, working with all different kinds of groups, from Code Pink to, some ACT UP and various groups. But here in Jefferson County, I work on the mayor's task force here in Charlestown with the homelessness problem in the JCCM. And I've been to all the churches here and worked with them on the meals they provide to people in need here in Jefferson County. And I've sat here and I've talked to the people at these dinners. I've listened to the stories from the elderly, from the children who don't have enough to eat, coming to the churches at night. So I'm very much involved and interested in helping my community and reaching out. And I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but I'm trying to help the homeless people here because the county's growing the problem. I mean, when you go to these churches that feed here in the county, the food's brought in from other churches, you meet people that come from all kinds of backgrounds and have a lot of interest. And if people would take the time to talk to these people, they'd really get a feel for them and really understand.
Thank you, Mr. King. Mr. Chapman?
I have a good relationship with minority communities. As I mentioned earlier, my parents were both educators. Everybody who went through junior high knew my mother. Everybody who went through Jefferson High knew my father. And they were in the system for 20, 30 years. I grew up being identified as one of their children, and I was and I met so many people in the community that way. When I was young, when I was in high school, I worked in a grocery store, and people would come in and say, "Oh, aren't you so and so?" And as a result of that, I know so many people, such a diverse group of Jefferson County, and I'm thankful for that experience. So I feel like my relationship with everyone in this county, the people that I've met is good. It's very positive, and I hope to continue to meet more people and to build on that.
Thank you so much.
So Reverend Lyles, do you have any follow-up questions before we have the closing statements from the candidates?
No, ma'am. We are just about out of time. I only want to, on behalf of the branch, thank these candidates for participating in this forum. It sends a clear message to members of our community that you do care. And we thank you for being here. We appreciate you. And now we would like to give you 1 minute for a summation. And then we're gonna close our forum for tonight. After one last announcement after your summation or closing statement. I guess I don't have any particular order. We can start with Mr. Cox, since I see you up top there.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you. Folks, I'm not going to be real long-winded on this. I'm just going to simply tell you, and this should be recorded and playable in the future. So go back, look at the questions, look at the answers from all of the candidates, take a look at where they come from, their background, and their work history. Don't vote party lines. My goodness, vote for the best person for the job. Again, my name is Steve Cox, and I'm an unaffiliated candidate for Jefferson County Sheriff. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Harris.
Yes, sir. First of all, I want to say thank you again to the NAACP for giving us this opportunity to speak to the community. I'd like to go back to the very beginning. Back in the pre-candidacy forum, I was one of the very first candidate that had their entire agenda on the web page. My entire brochure was completed and out there for everybody to see. Since that time, I've seen an awful lot of candidates seem to mirror my own ideas and views. I will say this, that I love this community. My kids have gone to school in this community. I still have grandchildren going to school in this community. A vote for me is vote for a person who has extensive years of experience. I am involved in community policing. I will be the sheriff that gets out of my chair and comes to your community. I will be putting liaisons out in each of the communities that have minority populations in them. What I ask is that you give me a shot on June 9th. Vote for me to be your next sheriff, and I will give you bullying-free schools and a safe place to live and send your kids to school at. I thank you very much for your consideration. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Mr. Chapman.
Well, I want to thank everybody who tuned in tonight to listen. Thanks for taking the time to get involved in the community. I appreciate you being here. I'm not going to tell you to vote for me, but I would like to humbly ask for your vote. My email address is mike@electchapmansheriff.com. My website is electchapmansheriff.com. My cell phone number is 304-279-6297. Call me if you like. I'm happy to hear your concerns. Even if you just want to share a positive or negative experience with your interaction with the sheriff's office, the tax office, or animal control, call me. If you want to personally interview me or ask some follow-up questions about this important position, call me. If I don't answer right away, I do work, so sometimes I can't answer the phone. Leave a message, and I will call you back. Again, thank you for your participation. Stay strong, and remember to vote for me in November. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. And Mr. King, you had the last word, sir.
Pastor, I want to say thank you and the NAACP for having me this evening. The reason I really I'm running for sheriff is I want to give back to the community. besides what I've done here in the city of Charlestown. And I'm seeking this job not for any personal gain. And I'm going to take $1 a year as my salary if I get elected. I really want to be the person who's not influenced and is out to help the people, the community. I want to reach back, be the approachable person that people point at on the street and say, that's our sheriff. And I want to do the right things. I have all the financial background to run the tax office. I know Ms. Hendricks personally. I've made a real effort to try and get out there and see what's going on. And I'm going to do the greatest job I can. JohnKingForSheriff.com on my website. I have Facebook. My cell number's on there. Please reach out if you have any questions for me, any of your congregation. And I'd love to sit down and talk to you about the Worship Watch program I've gotten from down in Hanover County, Virginia, where we work with the church leaders. Because I think the churches are a vital part of this county, and we need to support them more than we have. Pete's done a good job, but I want to take it a step even further.
Time.
Once again, we want to thank all of you for participating in the forum. And I know that Sister Ringgold and Mr. Rutherford would join me in thanking Ms. Jamila Fleet for making this forum possible. She is the CEO of Innovative
Solutions.
Innovative Solutions Technology. Am I right?
You're right.
And she is one of the most patient people I know. And we thank you for your service and for making this possible. I would like to announce that tomorrow night, we will have candidates for the office of magistrate. And on Thursday night, we will have our final forum will be for the candidates for the Jefferson County Board of Education. Please join us. We would love to have you. And didn't Miss Ringo do an excellent job leading our Q&A period? So there are applauses, Ms. Ringo, all over Jefferson County. Thank you for your wonderful work. Let us close with a word of prayer, please. Once again, gracious God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for these candidates for sheriff who are committed to making our county a greater place to live. Once again, we ask you to bless them, bless their families, bless their campaign. We thank you for everyone who joined us via Facebook, those who submitted questions. Oh God, we are so thankful. Hear our prayer tonight. Incline your ear to us and grant us your peace. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Have a great night, folks.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
All right.
Take care.
Thank you.
Night.
Good night.
Good night.
Best of luck to everyone.
And
Thank
people
you.
can pick this up on the NAACP website. This will be put on the website for those who were not able to join us live. Am I right, Ms. Fleet?
Correct. It'll be on our Facebook page and we'll post it on the website as soon as I get the recording.
Thank you so much. And good night again.
Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night, all.